So here it is, my advanced copy of Elmley, First Light to Last. It's been here for at least an hour, and as you can see, it hasn't been unwrapped yet. I haven't taken it out of the box. And why? Well, so much has gone into this book, both the photography and the making of this book. 35 years of photographs have gone into this, and more than a year and a half, 2.5 if you include the time when Neil Benvey came on board to help me whittle down an enormous amount of scan transparencies and digital files down to a more manageable amount. And since January 25, when Keith and Eddie joined me to really push this forward into the making of this book. So it's been a long process, and it's been a really exciting one, and one which I'm so pleased I've been on. And of course there's been some ups and downs, some anxiety and worry, etc., but also some real enjoyment and excitement. You know, collaborating with these guys has been absolutely fantastic and a marvellous experience. But Elmley Nature Reserve is such a major part of my life. It was where I did my first bird watching, really, back in 1980, when I was introduced to a local naturalist and photographer called Ted Coleman, who lived just along the door from me, just along the road from me rather. A brilliant naturalist and an outstanding photographer, and he just took me under his wing. And we went to Elmley, and I remember it was a cold, wet, windy afternoon in December, as I say, 1980. I was just turned 10 years of age, and I listed all those species which I spotted that afternoon, and then went back home and stapled it to the back of my copy of the Reader's Digest Book of British Birds, which I still have. And so many years later, I'm holding this book, which distills 35 years worth of photography, because even though I went there when I was 10 and made the occasional visit with Ted in my teens, it wasn't really until my 20s, when I could drive, that I went there in earnest, and it just became not just my passion, but my obsession. You see, Elmley lies on the Isle of Sheppey, just 15 minutes away from where I am on mainland in Sittingbourne, so just across the bridge. And Ted introduced me to the wardens and to the owner, Philip Merricks. And so over this time I've had this amazing opportunity to photograph the reserve with almost unrestricted access at any time of the day, to visit morning, noon, night, many early mornings. And I hope within this book it shows. So there's not much more to say really, other than that my life's work's in here. I've been so pleased with what we've chosen. Why is it called First Light to Last? Well, we wanted to steer clear of a spring, summer, autumn, winter. Too formulaic, a bit too predictable. Then Keith came up with the idea of just going through the seasons, but in a single day. So if you were to stay on Elmley at any time of the year, you would recognise aspects of what you see in the book. And also it lifted a huge weight off my shoulders in that I didn't feel compelled to show every species that I photographed or what can be spotted on Elmley. I mean, that would be another lifetime to do that. And even now there are certain animals, amphibians that I would have dearly loved to have photographed and included in the book. And many of my favourite images didn't make it into the volume, because there has to be a flow. It has to work in such a way that there are not too many jarring experiences. And the one word I've used throughout when designing this book, when collaborating with Keith and Eddie in the design of this book, is lyrical. I wanted it to speak softly to the viewer. And even though there are some amazing sunrises and sunsets and pictures of action, there are some quiet moments in the book as well. Reflective moments, both photographically and text-wise. Within it, well, the foreword by Stephen Dalton, who is my photographic hero bar none. I've had the great pleasure of getting to know and meeting Stephen a number of times now over the years, and he is one of the most influential photographers of our time. His high-speed photography is unmatched, of which he carried out mostly in the 70s, 80s and 90s, even today. And when I first bought his book back in the mid-80s on The Secret Life of an Oakwood, it wasn't necessarily the high-speed images which really caught my attention, but those smaller moments, those moments which so often you would pass by when walking through a woodland. An oak sapling coming through leaf matter, or a snail crawling over moss, a squirrel, a wood pigeon in flight, all those kind of images. And they really resonated with me, far more than lions and tigers and penguins, as marvellous as those creatures are, but something which was much more closer to home. Living in Sussex, as he does, and me in Kent, the places in which we live are very, very similar. So he was at the forefront of my mind to write the foreword, and thank you, Stephen, for agreeing to do it. I'm thrilled that you agreed to do it. And the afterword as well, by Philip Merricks. Thank you. The founder and owner of Elmley National Nature Reserve. For those of you which aren't familiar with the reserve, and I'll get on to opening the book in a second, but this is just kind of helping me calm down a little bit. I've had a bit of lunch, got a cup of tea, I'm holding the book, it's becoming a bit easier. And without Philip Merricks, of course, this just wouldn't have been possible without his support and permission. And of course, Gareth and Georgina, Bob Gomes, Steve and Todd and all those other wardens and farm managers that have helped me with this book throughout, and have put up with me, quite frankly, for coming onto the reserve at all hours. And it has been, and I hope will continue to be, a wonderful relationship between us. So anyway, I guess really I should get on to opening this book. But yes, Elmley, the Isle of Sheppey, just north of Sittingbourne, 3,300 acres, one of southern England's largest areas of coastal grazing marsh. Big skies, marshland, ditches, dikes, reed-filled pools and runnels, adjacent to the Swale, a channel that separates mainland Sittingbourne from the Isle of Sheppey. So there's salt marsh as well, and a plethora of bird and plant and insect species there, and mammals, of course, water voles and amphibians, most notably the marsh frog, very, very vocal in the spring. And birds from avocet, the emblem of the RSPB, to godwits and marsh harriers, peregrine falcons, short-eared owls, and insects, ruddy darters, bees, wasps, butterflies, they're all there. So choosing the photographs for this has been problematic, to say the least. But ultimately, pictures are there not just on their merit, but because I hope they fit in with the context of the book. And so this is a place that is truly, truly close to my heart, both physically, being just a short distance from me, and emotionally as well. It's always been there for me. So let's open the book. I'm actually quite excited now. Let's hope it opens relatively easily. Weight of the book is quite substantial. I believe there's 209 pages here. The cover of the book we were really happy with, and also the photograph as well that went on the front. It's a cloth cover, and let's open it up. It is going to be a job, isn't it? Opening it. Here it is. Okay. So, following our approval of these books, And I'm not sure what kind of approval they're after because they've all been printed. So barring Elmley being spelt incorrectly, they've all been done anyway. But anyway, it's very, very nice to receive an advanced copy and not just receive all of them on a pallet and then take one out. But to receive it like this is really special. I'm sure there are some of you watching this now saying, come on Candice, just rip it open. And you're right, of course. Oh, shoot. Oh wow, okay. First things first. They've spelt the reserve correctly. First light to last. Robert Canis. There it is. Beautiful cloth cover. And one of the things I wanted with the book is for it to have a really tactile feel to it, and it's just lovely. The photograph there, Clearing Storm, was photographed some years ago, and it just stood out to us as being the cover photograph. It just says so much about Elmley. Cattle moving across, a sweeping storm, big skies, bent over reeds. Okay, let's open it up. And this is a lovely addition that Eddie came up with. I wanted a map, of course, to show not just the key areas of the reserve, to put it in context with London, with southeast England, but also to show you where the hides are, where the car park is, the track, etc. And not just for it to be at the back somewhere, but for it to be right at the front, and furthermore, so it blends with the cover. And oh my gosh, that's just beautiful. It's in blue. So I've got a cartographer to do this, of course. That's just lovely. This feels really strange because up until now I've just been dealing with a computer screen or the sheets, the Epsom proofs, but it's all bound. And actually what I want to look at as well is even just this little bit here. You see this little tiny area just here. Eddie and I chose that while we were over in Italy. So do take note, and it really makes you appreciate bookmaking when you're doing your own, and especially one like this, where you're really hands-on and it's taken more than 1.5 years to produce. Those little details. Whenever I look through or purchase another photographer's photo book in the future, I shall never look at it in quite the same way again. Paper was chosen not just for its quality, but so that it laid reasonably flat. Of course, unless you get a completely lay flat book, which I didn't want because I wanted more of a sort of a traditional looking book. I didn't want a big gutter into the centre. I'm just looking through the very first image, Elmley, first light to last, forward Stephen Dalton, Robert Canis. I'm shaking a little bit here. Okay. I'm not just going to, by the way, spend the next 30 minutes looking down at the book. There's the first picture. Okay. Oh my God, I love the print quality. It's not glossy, it's not matte. The font size to me is just right. It's the minutiae when you're producing a book as well. The kind of font, how big, where to place it, the consistency, and this is why I brought on arguably two of the industry's best. Keith, just an amazing editor, and he's had an enormous experience from producing the Remembering series of books, as well as now the portfolio book for the Wildlife Photographer of the Year, as well as being editor for numerous photographic magazines, a wealth of experience, who I've been fortunate over many years to have dealings with my writings for the photographic press and with his interviews, and Eddie Ephraim's brilliant designer and photographer in his own right. He does a regular column in Black and White Photography magazine. And yeah, that's just lovely. And so, sprinkled throughout the book, I wanted it not to be a guidebook. It had to be lyrical and quiet and then building through a day. So what you're seeing here, I hope seamlessly, will be a whole day, 24 hours almost, but through the seasons, but sprinkled throughout my my experiences, my observations, and also words and poetry by both well-known and lesser-known poets and artists. So I'm going to go through quite briefly to a few. I'll show you a spread. Let's find a double page. I know this one here. Let's go a bit further on. To a picture. Okay. Wow. Okay, well here's not a double page spread, but it will give you an idea as to... So the book is 29 by 25. So a double page spread, 50 centimetres. And so there's a photograph there, along with some of my, with one of my observations there on the left hand side. Keep going through. Oh, it's printed so nice. Oh my gosh, all those hours spent in front of the computer, deliberating over a bit lighter here, a bit darker there. How will it reproduce? And of course, when you're reviewing the Epsom proofs in Verona as well, you're looking at them under different lighting conditions. Now I'm looking at them under what I consider to be normal household lighting, and it's really lovely. The size of the font as well. I can breathe a little now that I've got it in my hands and I'm flipping through it. Yeah, it's really lovely. Oh gosh, yes. This is really weird. It's actually quite emotional, because I'm going through photographs which evoke such memories. Barn owl flying over reed bed. Being careful here not to really finger it, but look, I'm going to have many, many more copies to come. The sharpness as well is just beautiful. I know it sounds like I'm waxing lyrical, it's because I am. Because not only when I first thought about doing this book and brought the idea to Gareth and Georgina Fulton, the custodians, if you will, the directors of Elmley, was what, 7, perhaps even 8 years ago, with my little sketches of pages and how I wanted it to be. But you know how time goes on and life moves on, of course, and I felt as though I had to get this book made. It had to be made. It can't just sit on a hard drive and transparencies. You know, none of us live forever, and it would be my life. It would be my biggest regret if one day I found myself in a position where I couldn't produce the book. None of us know what's around the corner. And so come what may, this had to be produced, and furthermore it had to be produced now. And not in 2, 3 or 4 years' time. But when there were those still around that would see this, that's so important to me that they get to see this, that I present them with a book. Let's show you another double page. Here we are. It's better if I hold it this way, isn't it? There you go. Rose Cottage, scanned beautifully by Tim Parkin. And drum scanned. It's an old transparency going back to the early maybe late 90s. Starlings. Yes. Okay. And now we're coming to the rear of the book. So it's gone through a whole year, and that's a double page spread. Now I'm really tempted to show you the final, you maybe just caught a glimpse there. But then I wrote the, with help of course from various texts and from Elmley themselves, a past and present. So there's there's such a history connected with Elmley, not least the brickworks, Turkey cement works, the school, which all those years ago actually was hailed as being England's smallest. There was a church, even a pub, and quite a thriving population. And now it's returned to nature. But there are still remnants of that past. As I say, the brickworks and the rather sort of crumbling remains now of the old schoolhouse. But they're still there, and there's this rich history that needed to be told. Furthermore, there are case studies. Got a couple of case studies here which I'll show you. There of a cattle egret and a darter dragonfly, and this goes behind the scenes, so I hope this will appeal to both photographers and non-photographers alike, in that it gives a behind the scenes as to how I took the photograph, not just from a technical standpoint, but my approach, how I photographed the subject, the entering of the hide, my thought process behind the image, and there's just a few notes at the foot as well. There's what camera I use, shutter speed, aperture, etc. And so that's really important to me, of which I believe there are 6. Yes, there are. I'm so pleased we went for the size of the font as well. It's right at the very last moment that I felt the font needed to be just a touch larger, and Eddie is just super. Nothing was ever too much trouble for either of them. I really couldn't have hoped for a better team behind me. Just outstanding, really. I can't praise and thank them highly enough. So the case studies, the afterword, beautifully written by Philip Merricks, MBE, founder of Elmley National Nature Reserve. And then a little biography of myself. A few notes on the photography, on AI, Photoshop, where I began with my photography, with my journey, and the camera that I first had all those years ago. And then at the back, the Elmley 100, who came on board at its earliest stages, who supported this book some time ago. And they're all listed. There you are, guys. Thank you so, so much. And we've included that beautiful picture of a curlew chick in the palm of the keeper's hands, the South of England Curlew Recovery Project. But everybody there that supported the project from the earliest beginnings, at least when the book was in production, is listed there. So thank you all very, very much indeed. Some of you will be at the official launch at Elmley. Then we go on to the acknowledgements. Everybody that I felt, I mean, of course you can't acknowledge absolutely everybody that's involved in the book, because it will just go on and on and on, but I felt there were a certain number that really needed to be mentioned there. And the imprint, and another photograph at the end, and this is another lovely touch by Eddie. Strokes of genius throughout the book by him. I'm not going to show you. I'm not going to show you what's right at the very end. You've seen the beginning, you've seen a couple of spreads. There's the front of the book again. It's a beautiful colour, isn't it? And the spine. Yeah. So, man, I'm over the moon. All I've got to do now is sell them. Oh dear, what have I done? I said right from the very beginning, come what may, this book had to be made. To give copies to those that have shared my experiences on Elmley, that have been responsible for much of this photography, whether it be Philip, Gareth, Georgina, to my dad. That was bound to happen, wasn't it? So you see the significance and the importance of this book. it's not just a book, you know, it's kind of, it's like a memoir as well, I guess. You know, there are photographs that take me back so many years, right up until photographing to the last minute, you know, when there were photographs being taken that I wanted included into the book. And as I say, Keith and Eddie is so helpful in this aspect. So all I've got to do, like I say now, is sell a few copies. They're all arriving next week, but the official launch, which happens at Elmley, which I'm so excited about, because of course it has to be there, doesn't it? You know, where it all began. It has to be at Elmley, so I'm really looking forward to that. That's on August the 17th. So some obviously selected number of guests are going to be there. So all I would like to ask now is that you consider purchasing a copy. Whether you know the reserve or not, whether you even know where the Isle of Sheppey is, it doesn't matter. I hope that the collection of photographs and writings and experiences distilled in the book that are sprinkled throughout the book will be worth it for you. It couldn't have been printed, to be fair, and designed any better by anyone or anywhere better, you know, than by Keith and Eddie and EBS in Verona. And you really feel like you're holding a piece of art, really, you know. I've always argued that photography is art. Some would say, no, it's not, it's painting, etc. But, you know, camera's but a mere tool. You'd never have said to an artist that, you know, it's a great piece of artwork, so you must have great paintbrushes. Equally with photography, it doesn't matter what camera you have. You know, it's the 6 inches behind the viewfinder, as Ansel Adams famously once said. But more than that, it's my passion that's gone into this work. And thank you all again, very much indeed, for those of you that have supported me throughout. And as I said, please do consider purchasing a copy. If you just go onto my website, robertcanis.com, and there you'll see some pretty obvious links, book purchase. And there are 3 editions: standard, collector's and deluxe collector's edition. And those which joined the Elmley 100 had first dibs, so the deluxe and the collector's editions are actually going quite quickly. If you get a deluxe edition, you get an invitation to the official launch, plus to the presentation. So 6 days later, I'm doing a presentation in Sittingbourne, in my hometown, in the Avenue Theatre. I rarely, very rarely, just once or twice a year now, give in-person talks. But I really wanted to show the backstory to the making of this book, plus some stories behind some of my favourite images as well. And there's only 80 seats, and so it's an add-on option anyway, so whether you get standard, collector's or deluxe edition, it'd be lovely to see you there, to meet you in person, and for you to collect your signed copy. Every single copy of the book gets signed, every single copy. The collector's edition has a slipcase, of which I will receive with the remaining books next week. So you get a beautiful sort of slipcase. And the deluxe collectors are numbered, just 25 of the deluxe collectors. And on the bottom of the slipcase it will say deluxe collector's edition, in the stamping that you see where Robert Canis is. So do at least have a look on my website and see whether or not you want to support the project. I'd be absolutely thrilled if you did. For many reasons, not least because, as I said, you know, I've got a lot of books I need to, I need to sell, but more importantly, far more importantly than that, is to show others the beauty of this significant and marvellous nature reserve. It's such a beautiful place. It's right on my doorstep, 40 miles from London. It's one of our last wildernesses here in southern England. and it deserves all the recognition that it gets. Thank you for bearing with me. I'm so pleased to have shared this moment with you. It was bound to happen with me getting a bit emotional, of course, because I'm sitting here looking at it and can still hardly believe what's happening. But anyway, here it is. I can't wait to receive the rest of the books next week, and following both the official launch and 6 days later the presentation in Sittingbourne at the Avenue Theatre, to present this book to you all. Thank you all again, and I hope to see you. Thank you.